What is going on, everyone? Tim from Tierfon Orbital. I am going to take a little bit of a liberty today and go over a personal hilt. I finished this hilt a little bit before my move, so I haven't really had a chance to do a video for it. And this hilt, in my opinion, does deserve a video. I put a lot of planning and work into this hilt. So I did want to do a detailed walkthrough video for it. A lot of people were asking where some of the parts for this came from and how I went about designing the chassis for it. So I want to go over all of that now. This is a custom Scrapflex, I guess this is Scrapflex, with a Canon Y flashgun grip. I did this in bare brass and then went back and weathered the brass, obviously. I had been wanting to do a full brass scrap for a long time now. The awesome folks over at the Graftex shop do offer Graftex kits that are not chromed, in that they're just the bare polished brass. So I picked up a set a while ago. I just have not had the chance or the time to put a build together. My first decision that I needed to make, right, was whether or not I wanted to keep this shiny, shiny polished brass. If I wanted to have a polished brass Scrapflex, or if I wanted something more dirty and more gritty. So I went with the weathered route, the dirty route, and that was for a number of reasons. Mainly, when I really thought about it further, having a polished brass grip, in my opinion, would have looked a little weird. I didn't want to wrap the grip because I wanted to utilize the holes that are in the Canon Y flash gun. I wanted to utilize those as windows for some shine through. So I thought doing a weathered version would look better, and I'm really, really happy with the way this came out, right? So I also did a custom pommel for this particular build. I am not able to thread here. I mean, obviously, I don't have a lathe. I don't even have a drill press here. All of the stuff that I do is done with hand tools and a Dremel, and by hand, right? So I'm very limited with what I have. That said, I knew that I needed a pommel. Obviously, I needed a pommel for this build, but I wanted to do something custom. I wanted to do something chunky. I wanted to do something heavy. So I designed my own pommel in Fusion and sent that off to Craft Cloud to get printed in aluminum, bare aluminum. I have some accents that were also designed that go around the pommel, and I had those printed in brass. And I also did a custom Kobold greebly in brass as well. And I'll go over all of that when we do an up and close. So, a lot of planning. I sent that off to Craft Cloud and forgot about it, honestly. And like a couple of weeks later, a month later, it arrived, and I went to work, prepping this hilt. The cool thing about Canon Y grips, right? And I actually have one second. So the cool thing about Canon Y flashgun grips is that I just so happen to have one here. They are brass. So under this layer of anodized, I actually think some of them have anodized layers, some of them are painted. The one that I did for this scrap just so happened to be painted, but these grips are really, really unique because they're brass, right? The Graflite ones that I use for my other scrap, those are aluminum. Graflex are chrome-plated brass. This is like a painted brass, right? So I knew that I wanted to use a grip from a Canon Y, but I needed to get that paint off. So the way that I did that with the one that I used was, so normally, right, if I had a lathe, I'd just turn it on a lathe and take that off really, really easily. Take off a very, very shallow layer of that anodizer or that paint. I don't have a lathe, so I did a ghetto lathe, right? I stuck, I have some expanding rubber bits for my drill, and I stuck that in here, and I turned it on a drill and held a piece of carbon sandpaper against it and sanded it all off that way. To my surprise, it all came off very quickly. So yeah, you work with what you got, right? I wanted a bare aluminum grip, and that was the only way that I was able to do it. So once I got down to the bare aluminum, then I was able to, place. I wanted to design a chassis around the windows in this Canon Y. So we've got a nice size circular here. There's a really unique one back here. I've seen somebody has done a build with a Canon Y grip like this before, and had a marble shine through. And that's really what I was going for this build. I can't for the life of me remember who did that build. And if anyone knows, please drop a comment so I can give some inspiration credit to it, because that's what I was really going for. I know I wanted some shine through on the chassis in those windows. And I actually did also go with a marble in mind. So without further ado, let's talk about the chassis, and then we'll do an up and close. Okay, so here it is. This is the chassis that I designed for this build. I called it the Goldenrod offhand. I really don't have an official name for this other than a brass scrap flex. But as you can tell, yeah, as per usual, I've got completely unnecessary greeblies along each side of the chassis. On this side, I also have 2 square LEDs. These are animated. And then around the back, I've got my my NeoPixel shine through vent that I use everywhere lately. And that's pretty much it. You will also notice that there's a giant channel here. So I do have a marble that is in this chassis. I'm really, really happy with the way that this came out. I was not sure how a marble would look in this chassis, but I'm really, really happy with the result. We've got a Profi board. I really need to get better with how I navigate in Fusion. So we've got a Profi board here, sits underneath this lip. Around the other side, you will notice there is a cutout here. So I got this idea from Benji, Nerf Customs, actually. The Graftex 2.0 kits from Vader's Vault have a very, very convenient notch in them. And that notch is perfect for either shine through or a kill switch. And I put a kill switch in mine. Ideally, you want a kill switch there so you don't have to unscrew the grip. Unfortunately, for me, my spacing was a little off, was off by like 10 millimeters. So I can't quite get to the kill switch with the grip fully threaded on, but I'm fine with that. I don't care about that. So let's talk about the pommel as well. So I just did a very simple pommel in Fusion, okay, and sent this off to Craft Cloud to get printed in aluminum. Because I don't have a lathe and I can't thread, and the Canon Y flashgun grip is too thin to put threads on anyhow. This is essentially just a sleeve. It's a sleeve where the Canon Y grip slides in the top here, and then I in turn JB welded it in place. And there's also a small set screw that helps secure it. But that's all it is, just JB welded in place. These channels here, I did do some other custom brass fins, and that's why these are here. I printed the brass fins in brass, and they are also just epoxied or JB welded in place, so they're not going to go anywhere, right? And that's it. So let's talk about this hilt. Let's do an up and close. Here we are. Listen, I'm really, really happy with how I am really, really, happy with how this came out. The only criticisms I have for myself is this Kobold greebly. I feel like it's a little too high. So I might go back and just have a shorter one. Like I might just design a shorter one and print that off in brass from Craft Cloud. But here are those fins that I mentioned. Right off the bat, for the profile of this hilt, I knew that I wanted a really, really big pommel. I was afraid that this would be too big for the hilt, but I feel like it goes in line and looks perfect with the rest of the hilt. I've got a some copper foil in here to go in line with the two-tone look of the whole lightsaber. So, I do want to talk about, sourcing parts, right? So scrap flex is just that. It's pieces of scrap that you put on a hilt. I did not want a just a bare Canon Y grip. I knew that that would look too plain to me. So I actually work as a network engineer during the day, and I found some old hard drives. This is just an old steel cage from an old spinning hard drive. So I just put that on the grip just to give it a little bit more of a unique look. I heat stained it as well, obviously. Here are the windows for shine through. So you can kind of see through this hole. There's a marble in there. You'll get a better look at it when I ignite the hilt. But that was my intention. I wanted to utilize this circular window for some shine through with a marble. Okay, making our way up. So this is that Vader's Vault Graftex 2.0 blade holder that I use all the time in my scrap builds. Here's that kill switch. It's just below where you really want it to be. So ideally, you want that kill switch to be right up here, so you don't need to unscrew the grip to hit it. With this 2.0 holder, I wanted it to be brass. So I took this and stripped down all the anodization off of it. I gave it, like, you know, the easy off or lye treatment. And then I did a bronze patina on it, but I feel like I left it in a little too long. So it's like just a super dark bronze. It almost looks black. But that's fine. Again, like, you know, I didn't intend for that to happen, and I'm really happy with the way it came out, okay? Making our way up, we've got this brass upper Graftex section. This is from the Graftex shop. I've got some, I use these heat sinks on the majority of all my scrap builds. And this is the same process that I usually do. Essentially it's a rectangular cube, but obviously you can't just slap that on the top of the, you know, on the top of the Graftex, because it's not going to sit flush. So I sand it by hand to make it concave, so it just rests on that Graftex upper section. I don't sand that by hand. That was a complete lie. I sand it by hand with a drill. It's just a sanding drum bit that's the same circumference as the Graftex. It's like 1.5 inches, I think, or maybe even, yeah, 1.5 inches or 1.75 inches. I have a clamp lever here. This is from One Replicas. Working red button. This is also from the Graftex shop. I actually did find out during this build too that these can be disassembled and heat stained. So underneath this red button, there is a set screw where there's a Phillips head. There's a Phillips head. There's also like a lock nut that holds everything in place. If you disassemble all of that, you can remove the plastic button and heat stain that Graftex red button. And that's what I did with this. Brass pins, also from the Graftex shop. Here's our bunny ears. They have been heat stained. With the glass eye, I did do a brass mesh behind that glass eye, just to go in line with the brass look of the hilt. And that's it. So let's talk about the chassis really quick. Here is the chassis. Obviously, I've already got a battery in here. So I did a pass of bronze rub and buff on this guy. I did paint some color accents on this, red and blue, and that's it, right? I wanted it to look dirty. I wanted it to look used. So let's turn this guy on.
I want to learn the ways of the Force and become a Jedi like my father.
So there's that marble and that marble changer. This is actually just a painted marble that I got locally here. It almost looks like a globe or a planet. It's probably hard to see on camera. There are those 2 square LEDs on board and our animated 2020 NeoPixel strip. So I wanted to make sure that once my grip is screwed in all the way, that this circular, I wanted to make sure, obviously, so when I screw this grip in all the way, I need to make sure that this hole is right on top of the marble. So figuring out the clocking on this was a little difficult. I designed and 3D printed a very thin resin ring that helps with clocking, so that when that grip is fully engaged, the hole is right above the marble, right? And that's it. Really happy with how this guy came out. So let's come down to the bottom. Okay, so here we are. There's that marble. We've got our shine through on our glass eye. I really appreciate that as well. Yeah, I love this thing. I'm really happy with how it came out. Let's put a blade in it. Okay, so this is a full-length blade. I'm going to try my best to not hit my ceiling fan. This is a 7/8 inch blade holder. I've said this before. I really prefer 7/8 inch blades to 1 inch. And we're ready to go. See what I can. One more.
Inquisitorious.
So that's it. Just a quick rundown on my personal Goldenrod brass scrap flex. A lot of people were asking what went into that build, so I wanted to go over a little bit in detail. So that's it. Everybody, thank you very much for your support. Thank you for watching. If anyone has any questions about this particular build, please don't be a stranger. And with that being said, may the force be with you always. Thanks for watching, everybody.